Where was God when heaven first shattered? When the most beautiful being ever created turned on his maker? When 1/3 of the stars followed a dragon into darkness? Where was the one who formed them all? Today, you will see what Scripture really says. You'll witness the throne not as a backdrop, but as a battlefield. Before the first sword was drawn, before Michael stood to fight, before Lucifer dared whisper his 5 blasphemies, God was not absent. He was present, watching, sustaining, and planning. What he did next reveals the reason evil was permitted at all. Subscribe as we reveal the location of the Almighty during the greatest rebellion heaven ever endured. The answer will change how you see justice and how you understand love forever. In the beginning, before the shaping of dust or the breath that gave man life, there was fire, holy fire, and light that did not flicker. It was in this realm of eternal brilliance, where time had no meaning and space bowed to the will of its maker, that the first beings emerged at the word of God. Among them stood one who would reflect heaven's glory more fully than any other. His name was Lucifer, not yet the adversary, not yet the deceiver. He was the anointed cherub that covereth, as declared in Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 14. Not born, but created. Not evolved, but spoken into radiant existence by the same voice that would one day calm storms and raise the dead. Every detail of Lucifer's being was intentional. His covering, as the prophet records, was adorned with every precious stone: sardius, topaz, diamond, beryl, onyx, jasper, sapphire, emerald. These were not decorations, they were declarations. Each gem pulsed with a color of divine truth, a facet of God's nature refracted through a single being. He moved not in dust, but on burning coals, walking among the stones of fire that burned beneath the throne of the Almighty. These stones, mysterious and terrible, were not of earth. They were the foundation of divine presence, living embers of holiness itself. Only the most exalted had access to them, and Lucifer walked upon them freely. The throne was not unfamiliar to him. He did not behold it from afar. He stood close. He stood above, for his wings, outstretched and magnificent, overshadowed the very place where the glory of God touched creation. In the Holy of Holies, centuries later, cherubim would be carved over the ark, their wings meeting in the middle as a symbol of this overshadowing. But Lucifer was the original pattern. His form was the reference. He did not serve at a distance. He stood as guardian of proximity, the veil between holiness and all else. He bore the sound of heaven's music within him. Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 13 reveals that the workmanship of your timbrels and pipes was prepared in you on the day you were created. His body resonated with the worship of heaven. He did not merely sing praise, he embodied it. Every movement was melody, every gesture a harmony. His presence drew reverence. He was, for a time, the mirror of God's majesty. Yet for all this, Jesus made him, the Word by whom all things were created, as John chapter 1 declares, made Lucifer knowing the full cost. The betrayal, the war, the sorrow, the fall, and yet he spoke him into being. Why? Because even rebellion would one day serve a higher revelation. Because love creates, even when it knows it will be rejected. Because glory is not diminished by the existence of opposition. It is magnified through it. Jesus, pre-existent and omniscient, shaped every detail of this cherub with perfect understanding. There was no flaw in the design. The potential for pride was not a crack in the creation, but the necessary byproduct of choice. Lucifer had to be able to fall, or worship would never be real. He had to stand high in order to truly fall, and in that elevation, the risk of revolt was born. Yet God did not hesitate. He formed the stones of fire. He designed the circuits of the cherub's mind. He breathed light into the being who would one day curse the light, not because he was reckless, but because the Lamb was already slain in eternity. The cross was not a reaction to the fall. It was older than the rebellion itself. It stood before the angels, before Eden, before the stars. And so, with deliberate purpose, Jesus shaped Lucifer in beauty. He adorned him with light. He placed him at the heart of the throne's shadow, and he watched as the first notes of heaven's song rang out, not from seraphim, not from the stars, but from the living instrument he had just crafted. Lucifer sang. The heavens trembled with awe. Thrones and dominions, principalities and powers turned toward him with reverence. His light did not compete with God's, but reflected it flawlessly, for a time. And all the while, the Word who formed him remained silent, not distant, not disinterested, but sovereign. For in that silence, a question had already been planted, one that would one day be answered not with lightning, but with blood. Where was God during Lucifer's rebellion? He was present, and he was watching. But before the rebellion, there was glory, a glory so dazzling that even the stars envied it, a glory so close to the throne that it seemed almost divine. Almost, and yet never equal, never creator, never I am. Lucifer was the masterpiece of the created order, but he was still dust compared to the one who called light into being without sun, who sustains atoms by mere thought, who sees the end from the beginning. And it was in this perfection, in this terrifying proximity to holiness, that the seeds of pride were sown. But before they sprouted, there was only the splendor, the covering wings, the burning stones, the shimmering garments of praise, and the knowledge, unspoken but absolute, that the one who created him was watching and waiting. Lucifer stood where no created being had ever stood, close enough to feel the pulse of divine glory, close enough to see the rivers of living fire that flowed from beneath the throne. Once, this proximity filled him with awe, but over ages uncounted, awe turned to familiarity, and familiarity began to curdle into entitlement. He gazed upon himself, reflected in the crystal sea that stretched before the throne. What he saw was flawless. The stones that covered him shimmered with every color of the rainbow, sardius burning like the dawn, topaz glowing like molten gold, sapphire deep as the first heavens. In their reflection, he no longer saw God's craftsmanship. He saw his own magnificence. The sound of his own voice began to intoxicate him. He was the chief of the heavenly choirs, and when he sang, the waves of worship surged across the cosmos. Stars trembled, nebulae burst into light, and yet all that glory no longer reminded him of his Maker. It began to remind him of himself. Scripture records the thoughts that would one day damn him. In Isaiah chapter 14, verses 13 to 14, his heart whispered, "I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High." These were not shouts yet, not declarations spoken aloud. They were silent convictions taking shape, subtle distortions of truth, turning admiration into ambition. He who had once been the covering cherub now desired to be covered in worship himself. Every glance of reverence from lesser angels became a spark feeding his pride. Every song that passed through his being made him feel a little more godlike. His perfection had become poison. Pride, the most ancient of sins, was born not from hunger or fear or need, but from abundance. The greater the light, the deeper the shadow it could cast. And Lucifer's light was great indeed. He began to reason in secret chambers of thought. If all things exist to glorify the Creator, and I reflect that glory most perfectly, then am I not the truest expression of divinity? It was a blasphemy disguised as logic, rebellion masquerading as reason. Heaven did not tremble yet, but the seed of discord had been sown. The atmosphere around him began to change, imperceptibly at first. Worship that once flowed upward to God now curved subtly inward toward the creature who bore it. Some among the angels, innocent and impressionable, felt drawn to that radiance and mistook it for the presence of the Almighty. They did not yet understand that Lucifer's light was borrowed, like the moon's glow from the sun, and Lucifer himself began to forget that truth. The reflection convinced itself it was the source. In the midst of this silent corruption, Jesus watched. The Son, by whom and for whom all things were made, saw every thought as it took form. He saw the pride gathering mass like a storm forming on the horizon of eternity. Yet he did not intervene. He could have spoken one word, one command, and unmade the cherub in an instant. But to do so would have undone freedom itself. Love without choice would cease to be love. So he allowed the storm to build. Heaven remained radiant, but beneath that radiance, a fracture was spreading through one heart. Lucifer's thoughts deepened in defiance. Why should I bow? Why should I sing to another when I, too, am glorious? Why should I kneel when my very wings uphold the throne? It was blasphemy clothed in poetry. Each question another step away from the light he claimed to love. He began to test the boundaries of reverence. His songs grew subtly self-referential. His melodies lingered on his own name. Other angels noticed the shift, but they could not name it. How could corruption exist in a place of perfection? How could pride bloom where there was only holiness? Yet it did. It began as a thought, and thought became desire, and desire became destiny. Lucifer's eyes, once turned upward in worship, now sought the heights for conquest. I will ascend. Those three words echoed through the corridors of eternity. They were not heard by ears of flesh, but by the heart of God himself. And still, Jesus waited. The patience of the eternal Son is not weakness. It is the perfection of sovereignty. He allowed pride to mature so that justice would one day be unmistakable. No creature could claim ignorance when rebellion was finally judged. And so the throne remained still. The Creator watched his masterpiece unravel itself, thread by thread. The light that once crowned heaven now began to dim from within. Lucifer's radiance took on a harder, colder sheen, like light reflected through ice instead of flame. The stones that once burned with praise now glowed with vanity. He began to dream of a throne of his own, not beneath the Almighty, but beside him, to be like the Most High. That was the thought that shattered eternity's peace. And while he dreamed of rising, the Creator who made him remained seated, watching with infinite sadness, knowing that this single thought of pride would ignite the greatest war the universe would ever know. The silence in heaven was not the absence of power. It was the presence of something deeper, something more terrifying than wrath, restraint. As Lucifer's pride fermented into poison, it did not remain contained within him. He began to move among the angels, not as a rebel, but as a brother. His words were soft, never seditious on the surface. He clothed his envy in concern, his ambition in questions that sounded wise. Is not worship beautiful? He would ask. But must it only rise in one direction? He never accused. He suggested. He never attacked. He invited. And in a realm where no lie had ever been spoken, where purity was assumed and trusted, his words were received without suspicion. He was, after all, the anointed cherub, the bright one. His position carried weight. His voice had always led praise. Now it led inquiry. To those closest to him, he whispered of potential. Why must the glory only reflect through me? Why should we not all shine in our own right? He twisted truth like a serpent coils its body, graceful, quiet, deadly. His questions cast shadows on certainties, not enough to alarm, but enough to make the heart hesitate. Some angels, sensing something foreign, drew back in confusion, but others listened. And the more they listened, the more they began to see in Lucifer a kind of boldness they had never seen before. A hunger for greatness that to the naive looked like strength. He promised freedom, but only from a bondage they had never noticed before. "What if there is more?" he asked. "What if the throne is not the only source of destiny?" These were not demands, they were doorways, and many began to walk through them. Slowly, subtly, loyalties shifted, not away from God, but toward the idea that another greatness might be possible. Lucifer never declared war. He cultivated wonder. He offered a vision of heaven not as it was, but as it could be. Under his light, under his leadership, his charisma cloaked his corruption. He spoke of harmony, not hierarchy, of beauty, not bondage, of shared glory, not submission. Yet all of it led to one silent goal: I will ascend. The whispers spread. Some angels, those created for song and service, began to sing a slightly different tune. Their harmonies still praised the Creator, but their hearts began to admire the creature. A third of heaven, an unthinkable number, began to lean in toward Lucifer's gravity, drawn not by force but fascination. And still, Jesus did not move. Still, the throne did not shake. Still, the voice that had called stars into being remained silent. Why? Why would the Almighty allow treason to blossom in his courts? Because love must permit freedom, and freedom must be tested to be proven. Loyalty that cannot be broken is not loyalty, it is programming. Worship that cannot choose another is not worship, it is reflex. So the Creator waited, not because he was unsure, but because he was perfect. He watched the ripening of pride, the spreading of doubt, the slow twisting of affection away from light and toward illusion. He saw every whisper pass from mouth to mouth. He heard every unspoken thought. His omniscience was not blind to rebellion. It bore witness to it in full, and still, he did not crush it. Because in the courtroom of eternity, God never condemns without evidence, never punishes without clarity. He allows the cancer to show itself before cutting it out. He allows the lie to speak fully before silencing it forever. The angels had to see what pride would become. They had to taste the fruit of rebellion before they could understand its rot. The silence of Jesus was not passivity. It was mercy extended to the very limit. Every moment Lucifer was allowed to speak was another moment God was proving that his kingdom was not held together by fear, but by truth. And truth does not fear examination. So the Word who had made the cherubim splendor now watched that same being unravel heaven's peace, thread by thread. The throne, high and lifted up, did not tremble, because the King upon it had already written the end from the beginning. And he knew, once pride had reached its full measure, once deception had done its work, once every soul had chosen whom to follow, then the silence would end, and justice would roar. But not yet, for now heaven held its breath, and the Son who held all things together by the word of his power remained still, not out of weakness, but out of strength so great it could wait. Then it happened. Suddenly, yet not without warning, the heavens, which had known only harmony since the dawnless beginning, now shook with the weight of something utterly foreign. Defiance. Revelation. Chapter 12, verse 7, breaks the silence with terrifying clarity. And there was war in heaven. Not metaphor, not symbol, war, real, searing, violent division, like lightning splitting the sky of eternity. It began not with horns or battle cries, but with the final choice. Lucifer, the once anointed cherub, no longer whispered. He stood unveiled, surrounded by a third of heaven's host, no longer hiding his ambition. What had been veiled in questions now roared in blasphemy. No longer, I wonder, but I will. No longer seduction, but confrontation. And so, by command of the throne, Michael rose, not as a prince of peace, but as a sword drawn from the scabbard of divine authority. He did not speak for himself. He did not act in anger. He was the appointed captain of heaven's armies, and his orders came not from consensus, but from the eternal word. Heaven, once a sanctuary of sound and light, now became a battlefield of fire. Blades not forged by hand, but by holiness itself, ignited in angelic hands. The stars held their breath as glory clashed against glory. Swords of fire struck wings once woven in praise. The very fabric of heaven shimmered with the force of every blow. The faithful angels, 2/3 of an uncountable host, moved with disciplined fury, not driven by hatred but by loyalty, not bloodlust, but love for the throne that had remained silent until justice could speak. And at the center of it all, untouched by chaos, Jesus remained seated. He did not descend. He did not shout. He did not lift a hand, because his throne is not threatened by rebellion. His power is not measured by motion. He is the sustainer of all things, and in that moment, he sustained the war itself, not as its cause, but as its sovereign witness. Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3 declares that he upholds all things by the word of his power. And that word upheld even those who raised swords against his order. The breath they used to curse him came from him. The light in their eyes, now darkened by pride, was still borrowed light. Even Lucifer, now revealed as the dragon, moved only because the sun allowed movement. It was a battle fought in 2 dimensions, fire and fidelity. The fallen were fierce, but fractured. Their rebellion gave them rage, but not unity. Pride does not bind, it isolates. And one by one they began to fall, not by might, but by the authority of the one who remained unmoved. Michael's sword blazed like a comet, severing illusions, silencing lies. The faithful fought not for their own sake, but for the order that had shaped them. They fought for the silence that had given way to truth. They fought because love must defend what it cherishes. And as the battle reached its zenith, a cry split the heavens. Not from Lucifer, not from Michael, but from the throne itself. Not a sound, but a verdict. And in that instant, the tide turned. Lucifer's beauty cracked. His wings, once radiant, became scorched with fury. His name, once associated with light, now collapsed under the weight of accusation. No longer Lucifer, now Satan, adversary, accuser. The dragon was born from the ashes of the cherub, and heaven, once his dwelling, became his exile. Like lightning, swift, blinding, irreversible, he was cast down, him and those who followed him. 1/3 of the stars extinguished in one command. They were not destroyed, but displaced. For their war was not the end. It was only the beginning. And as they fell, heaven stood in solemn silence. No cheer, no celebration. Only the unshaken presence of the sun, still seated, still sustaining, still watching. Because even now, the war was not over. It had simply shifted realms. Earth, newly formed, newly breathed, would become the next battlefield. And the Lamb who sat upon the throne had already made the decision. He would not fight with a sword. He would step into dust and win the war through blood. God does not react, he reveals. From the highest throne above time and creation, he had seen the entire span of history before its first breath. Lucifer's pride did not catch him unaware. The rebellion did not shake heaven's foundations because it had been foreseen before the foundations were laid. In the vast, eternal mind of God, every act of every being was already weighed, measured, and permitted according to purpose. And the purpose was glory, not cheap, manufactured glory, but glory that triumphs through contradiction. Why did he allow the light to corrupt itself? Why did he permit the most beautiful creature to become the darkest enemy? Because only in the contrast could the fullness of his nature be unveiled. Only through the fall could justice be displayed in its blazing purity. Only through mercy shown to the undeserving could grace shine as more than a word. The war in heaven was not the interruption of God's plan, it was part of it. Not as an author of evil, for God tempts no one, but as the sovereign who makes even rebellion bow to his will. Isaiah chapter 46 verse 10 proclaims, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. God's pleasure was not war, it was redemption. But redemption can only be known when there is something to redeem. The fall of Satan, terrible, devastating, mournful, was allowed because it would serve as the backdrop against which the greatest act of love would one day be displayed. The cross was not plan B, it was the plan from before time. Revelation chapter 13 verse 8 calls Jesus the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. That means before Lucifer was adorned with sapphire and gold, before he sang a single note of heavenly praise, the cross had already been spoken into eternity. The nails were already seen, the blood already decreed. Calvary was not a desperate rescue, it was a divine strategy, a cosmic plan so profound that even angels long to understand it. Lucifer's rebellion became the catalyst for a question that would echo across every realm. Can God still be good if he allows evil? And the answer would not come in a speech. It would come in the form of a savior, torn and bleeding on a tree, taking into himself every ounce of the darkness that once rose up in heaven. By permitting the fall, God was making space for a deeper revelation of himself. For before the rebellion, the hosts of heaven knew him as creator, judge, ruler. But through the fall and what would follow, they would come to know him as redeemer, father, and friend. The cosmos needed more than a king, it needed a lamb. And for the lamb to be lifted up, there had to first be a fall. God allowed Satan to rise so that in crushing his pride, the universe would see what humility looks like in its purest, holiest form. Jesus would not defeat the dragon with thunder. He would defeat him with silence before his accusers. He would not ascend in radiant armor. He would descend into flesh, into death, into shame, and through that descent, crush the serpent's head. Every moment of Lucifer's rebellion served a larger tapestry, one woven in eternity's loom. And though none but the Father, the Son, and the Spirit knew the full design, the angels began to sense that the silence of God had always been pregnant with a plan, a cosmic strategy, not to restrain rebellion by force, but to transform it into a stage. The war in heaven was only the first act. The real story, the real battle, would be won through a crown of thorns, not celestial swords. And in that mystery, the character of God would be revealed more deeply than even the highest cherub had ever imagined. There are no long wars in heaven. When truth stands fully revealed, deception has nowhere left to hide. The moment Lucifer crossed the threshold from silent ambition to open defiance, the war ignited, and it ended just as swiftly. No power can contend with the will of the Almighty when the moment of judgment arrives. And Jesus, who watched it all from the throne, the slow rise of pride, the corruption of worship, the gathering of the rebellious host, later spoke in Luke chapter 10, verse 18 with chilling clarity, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. It was not a gradual descent. It was a judgment, sudden and unstoppable. Lightning does not float, it strikes, and Satan, once Lucifer, was struck down from the heights he coveted. The brilliance that once made him the covering cherub now scorched him as he plummeted. No longer a bearer of light, he became the very emblem of darkness. The heavens, once pierced by war, were cleansed in an instant. The dragon and his angels were expelled, not with debate, not with mercy, but with finality. And heaven did not rejoice without grief. For though justice had triumphed, love had still been betrayed. A third of the stars had been extinguished by their own rebellion, yet heaven stood cleansed, the throne unshaken. The silence ended, and the courtroom of eternity sealed its first verdict. But the story did not end with a fall. It merely shifted its stage, for as Satan fell, the earth awaited, new, unspoiled, filled with beauty and breath. The battlefield moved from realms invisible to the soil of Eden. What was once a war of angels would soon become a war of generations, and the same enemy who had deceived spirits would now seek to deceive flesh. For Satan, cast down, was not annihilated. He was released to test, to tempt, to accuse. The justice of God had cast him out of heaven, but the strategy of God would now use him to reveal the hearts of men. Earth became the arena where the true loyalty of creation would be proven. The same question whispered among angels would now be whispered to Adam's children. Did God really say? The enemy came not as a roaring beast, but as a serpent, cunning, silent, slithering between branches of beauty. His weapon was no longer the sword, it was suggestion. And the stakes were no longer a throne, but the souls of a race. Jesus had watched him fall like lightning, but he also knew that one day he would descend, not to judge, but to save. For even as Satan struck the earth, the plan for the cross remained firm. The fall of the dragon was not the end of the rebellion. It was the beginning of a deeper conflict, one that would span centuries, empires, and hearts. A war not of heaven's hosts, but of men and women caught between two kingdoms. And at the center of it all stood the quiet throne, and the Lamb who would one day leave it. Heaven had cast down its rebel. Earth would now rise to choose its king. The expulsion was total. There was no corridor left in heaven for rebellion to breathe, no corner untouched by judgment's light. Satan and his host, once angels of splendor, were cast out with no hope of return. Revelation chapter 12, verse 8 declares, "There was no longer any place found for them in heaven. Not exile, erasure. The gates of eternity shut behind them with a finality that echoed across creation. But the tale did not close with their fall. The heavens were sealed, yes, but the stage of war simply descended. Earth, young and fragile, became the new theater for a cosmic struggle that began before time was measured. The enemy had lost the skies but gained ground among the dust. And he knew the throne he could not touch, he might still defy by wounding what it loved. Humanity became the target, not because of its power, but because of its potential. For in the breath of Adam was something no angel had ever known, the image of God. And the enemy, now a dragon in spirit, though veiled in serpentine cunning, slithered toward that image with malice sharpened by memory. But even this shift from celestial to terrestrial, was permitted by divine design. For the story was never only about angels, it was always about redemption. What began in heaven would not be completed through wrath, but through sacrifice. Jesus, who had remained seated during the war in heaven, who had uttered no command, but sustained the cosmos by his silence, now prepared to rise, not in vengeance, but in incarnation. He would step down, not with fire, but with flesh. The Son of God, eternally enthroned, would become Son of Man, clothed in weakness. The one who watched Lucifer fall like lightning would one day kneel before fallen men and wash their feet. The throne would empty, not because it had been overthrown, but because love stooped low to conquer what swords never could. This was the plan from the beginning, that the victory would not be through domination but through descent, not by angelic might but by human agony. The war would not end where it began. It would end on a hill called Calvary, where the king would bleed and the serpent's head would be crushed beneath a nail-scarred heel. And even now, this plan unfolds. Every breath, every hour, every human soul is swept into this story, knowingly or not. And if your eyes are open to it now, it is not by accident. If you are seeing this, hearing these words, it means you are not meant to walk in blindness. You are meant to understand what most never will. The rebellion is not a tale of the past. It is the lens through which the present is revealed. The war is not over. The dragon still moves through systems and hearts, deceiving, dividing, devouring. But the Lamb has already overcome. The blood has already been spilled. The victory is assured. The only question now is whose side you will stand on. Before we continue, if this content has blessed your life, like, comment, and share. Subscribe to the channel, and if you would like to bless the channel, click the super thanks button and leave an offering of any amount or become a member. That way, we can continue investing in research and improvements to bless your life even more. Now, let us return to the mystery that has echoed since eternity. Why the throne remained still, why God let rebellion run its course, and what that stillness means for the war within every human soul. In the chaos of war, in the roar of clashing wings and falling stars, when a third of heaven fractured under the weight of pride, the throne did not shake, and neither did the one who sat upon it. Jesus, the Word made flesh before flesh ever existed, remained seated, unflinching, upholding all things, even as rebellion flared in the courts of eternity. Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3 declares that He upholds all things by the word of His power. Not some things, not most things, all things. Every law of light and gravity, every orbit of every star, every breath of every angel, faithful or fallen. While Michael unsheathed his sword, while Satan rallied his rebels in a fury of delusion, the king did not rise. Why? Because he didn't need to. His authority was never in question, his dominion never in danger. A God who must leap to defend his throne is no God at all, but Jesus, the eternal Logos, sustained both the loyal and the traitors, even in the moment of their choosing. The atoms composing Lucifer's form still obeyed him. The light that wrapped around the dragon's wings was still borrowed. The time in which war unfolded was still his invention. Nothing, absolutely nothing, escaped his hand. This was not inaction. This was sovereignty. He who stood at the beginning, who spoke galaxies into spirals and suns into song, did not need to fight as angels fight. His stillness was not silence, but supreme rule. Every orbit held. The seas did not spill from their shores. The foundations of reality, laid upon his will, did not so much as tremble. While heaven tore itself apart, the galaxies beyond kept spinning. The winds on distant planets still danced through alien valleys. Stars were born. Songs were sung. Life moved forward, not because the war was insignificant, but because the throne was eternal. He is not a reactive God. He is the cause of causes, the pillar on which all other pillars lean. The ancient elders, the seraphim who cry, "Holy, holy, holy," without rest, did not cease their worship even as swords drew flame, because they saw what Lucifer never did, that true power does not boast, it reigns. And true majesty does not compete, it commands by being. Jesus remained seated not because he was passive, but because he had already authored the ending. The war was not the crisis, it was a chapter, and he had written every line before the first wing ever fluttered. His calm was the signpost of absolute dominion. As Satan fell like lightning and the heavens sealed their gates, the throne stood untouched. This is the God we speak of, one who does not panic when creation convulses, one who does not waver when worship turns to war. The immovable throne in the midst of cosmic revolt proves once and for all, sovereignty is not threatened by rebellion. It is revealed by it. Michael fought because he was commanded. Jesus didn't fight because he didn't have to. The distinction is not in courage, but in identity. Michael is an archangel, a prince among the hosts of heaven, mighty and radiant in loyalty, but he is still a created being. His sword is an extension of the divine authority granted. Jesus, however, is not granted anything. He is the source, the breath behind the word, the fire behind the throne. Colossians chapter 1, verses 16 and 17 declares, "For by him were all things created, that are in heaven and that are in earth, and by him all things consist." He is not a soldier in heaven's army. He is the reason the army exists. To imagine him wielding a blade like Michael is to misunderstand divinity. It is not that he cannot fight, it is that he does not need to. The authority that commands angels with a glance does not require steel. His presence is judgment. His silence is louder than any battle cry. His patience is not passivity. It is power clothed in mercy. Lucifer's rebellion, had it risen against Michael alone, might have succeeded. But it rose against the throne, and against the one who sits upon it, whose very breath is law. Jesus allowed the war not because he lacked the will to stop it, but because the war itself would serve a greater purpose. He allowed his name to be blasphemed, his design to be questioned, his worship to be redirected, all while he sat immovable, not because he was indifferent, but because he is so utterly secure in his glory that no rebellion could diminish it. His restraint is not weakness. It is the terrifying strength of a God who can wait while creation tests itself against him. When Jesus allows evil to speak, it is not because he cannot silence it. It is because he is allowing evil to condemn itself. The most terrifying thing in the universe is not the wrath of God. It is the patience of God, the knowledge that he sees all, hears all, and yet does not strike immediately. Because when he finally does, there will be no room left for argument. This is why he did not fight like Michael, because the true victory would not be decided by heavenly fire, but by earthly blood. The final crushing of the serpent would not be by sword, but by heel, and that heel would not descend in might, but in meekness. Jesus' plan was never to match Satan's rebellion with immediate power, but to reveal a kind of glory the universe had never seen, glory through humility. A king who steps off his throne to wear a crown of thorns. A creator who lets the created spit on him so he can redeem them. A judge who bears the sentence for his enemies. This is why Jesus did not draw a blade, because he was already preparing to offer his back to the whip, his hands to the nails, and his blood to the dust. His restraint in heaven was a foreshadowing of the cross, a quiet warning that the one who did not fight like Michael would soon win a battle far greater than the war in the skies. And when he wins, he will not need to raise his voice. He will only need to say, "It is finished." The rebellion was loud, spectacular, and cosmic in scale, but it was never the true war. It was a curtain rising, not a story ending. Heaven's battlefield was only the introduction to a far greater drama, one not fought with swords, but with surrender. From the moment Lucifer said, "I will ascend," Jesus had already determined that the way to win would be to descend. The throne was never in danger. The sovereignty of God was never shaken. The dragon did not even dent the glory of the king. But what Satan could never comprehend was that his own fall would serve as the perfect contrast to the mission of the Messiah. Pride reached for the highest place and was cast down like lightning. But humility, true, radiant, divine humility, would bow to the lowest place and be exalted above all. Philippians chapter 2, verses 7 through 9 declares that Jesus made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a servant. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore God has highly exalted him. The war in heaven was brilliant, but it was not beautiful. It displayed justice, but not yet mercy. The cross, however, would reveal both. There, the king who had upheld the universe in silence would finally speak, not with condemnation, but with compassion. Not, "I will ascend," but "Father, forgive them." At Calvary, the throne did not vanish. It moved, not from heaven to earth, but from glory to humility, from sovereignty to sacrifice. And in that blood-soaked silence, the serpent's head was crushed with a power no blade could ever wield. The war that began with flaming swords would end with torn flesh and a borrowed tomb. Lucifer fell because he tried to become God. Jesus conquered because he became man. That contrast is the secret of eternity. That is the plan that stretched from before the foundations of the world and will echo beyond the final trumpet. The throne was never shaken because the Lamb was always slain, in purpose, in forethought, in destiny. The final blow to the rebellion came not with wrath, but with wounds, and the throne remains forever occupied by a king who bleeds. Let the heavens testify. Let the angels still cry, "Holy, holy, holy." And let every redeemed soul know this: the war did not end in heaven. It ended at Calvary. The dragon lost not when he fell, but when the Son rose from the grave. And now every knee will bow, some in worship, others in defeat. But bow they will, because the one who remains seated through war is now exalted through scars, forever crowned, forever king, forever victorious.